Welcome, everyone, to this edition of System Override. We are so excited. We have Kara from KLYR Strategies with us today, and we're over the moon to have her join us. Welcome, Kara.
Thank you so much, Shannon, and thank you, Bree. Thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Kara, I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about your company,
Sure,
a little bit around your
absolutely.
strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Kara. I'm the founder of KLYR Strategies. So KLYR Strategies is fairly new. I just launched earlier this year, and my focus is really working with senior leaders in mostly small to mid-sized companies that are headed towards something big, are in the middle of something big, or planning ahead for something big. And when I say something big, I mean things like big product launches. I work a lot with healthcare companies, so regulatory approvals and milestones, leadership transitions, and in a lot of cases for these smaller startups headed toward things like acquisition or commercialization of their products. So I come from about 20 years working in communication roles across a few different regulated industries, financial services and healthcare, and decided, to take my skills and expertise to work for myself, often with a lot of the colleagues I've worked with in the past, just in a different capacity. And so far, it's been really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. I also left a career in regulatory industries, and I'm so happy to be in a non-regulatory industry.
I
We can
think to
move way faster.
applaud you, that's like a really exciting step on your journey and not an easy one to take. So I think that's just so exciting. And it's amazing to
Thanks.
see like other, high performing, powerful women being like, hey, I'm going to start doing my own thing because I've got a lot that
Yeah.
I can offer in this regard. And kind of just taking ownership and control over where they want to be taking their career. I think that's super cool.
Yeah. Thank you. I agree. I agree. And I think these days, it's in some cases, people think, the corporate world is the security with it, but
Hmm.
more and more that security is less secure. And I
Yeah.
decided, I'm gonna secure my own future and be in charge of my destiny. So
Yeah.
yeah, here we are. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm pumped to be here.
I love it. Well, I feel like with your background too, you probably have a lot of experience around like change management because that's something we're very passionate about and talking
Yeah.
about, our area of work and where we are is really around like shepherding individuals and organizations through that change. And it's
Right.
something that, we're seeing a lack of in a lot of what we're hearing in the news and how people are approaching this is just thinking that something so significant as a new era of work is just or doing anything. Like, it's anything. It's a rollout, it's these announcements. It's just thinking that it's almost like, have we gone so tech, we forget that it's not just a push a button and then things just swap immediately, And so I
Yeah.
feel like you'll have a lot of great things. We wanna dig in on that aspect as well.
Yeah. You're totally right. I think there's so much going on right now that makes my comms brain churn, to say the least. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I saw too, it's not even just comms brain, because I think in the past, you were probably, like, accountable for a lot of just, like, how communications went out for, like, large brands and things like that,
Totally.
and so
Yep.
you just seeing it, it's probably just, like, the past trauma triggers of, like, "Emergency! Horrible messaging! Horrible way to
Yes.
send this!" Yeah.
Yes. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm feeling that a lot these
Yeah.
days. It feels like every week or even more frequently, there's some, kind of
Some.
poor in my opinion, poorly done announcement or shift in a company that, might not have made news if it hadn't been done so poorly, or it would have made
Yeah,
news, but not as horribly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that.
I know,
I
it's
think
like,
that's true.
you're in tech, and I love tech, and I hold tech near and dear to my heart, but at the same time, you just wanna be like, "Oh, you little darlings, you this isn't your area of expertise, and
Yeah.
you're not willing to understand that you need to hire somebody because this is not a good thing, and it's also more important than you realize." And so it's
100%. Yes, for sure.
all right, well, I'll let Shannon take control again. It's back
Well,
to go.
just before we get off of the banter, Kara, in early days, what would be the one thing, if you're comfortable sharing with the audience,
Yeah.
that you are most proud of in running your own business?
Oh gosh. Well, I would say there's Probably two aspects to it. So for me personally, I tend to be a fairly introverted person. I'm not a shy person, but I do tend to get more energy from being alone, and it's a little
Hmm.
bit draining, not in a terrible way, but it takes a lot out of
Yeah.
me to be
Mhm.
around people, especially strangers. And I'm finding in this role, I'm putting myself in literal rooms with
Mhm.
strangers and also, on calls and things like this, doing this conversation with you all that, old Kara would not have done or raised her hand for. So that's been like very personally, I think, enriching for me. And then the other
Uh,
thing I would say is just the setup of my business. It's such a cool time to be setting up a business as a sort of solopreneur because
mhm.
the things that I'm able to lean on in my buddy Claude and
Yeah.
to help advise me and give me a literally give me advice on things, but also do things for me that I don't right now have the ability to hire for.
Mhm.
So that's also been cool. I'm kind of proud of how far I've been able to lean on some of my AI tools to really get myself up and running, even outside of like client work, which is really
Yeah.
nice.
I love that. And thank you for sharing because I think
Yeah.
quite often we forget as entrepreneurs to share these things that
Yeah.
even early days, because we all know how tough it's probably tough all the way through, but early days are like a real slug. And you have to get out of bed every day and be excited about what you're doing, even though you know it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
thank you.
it is
Congratulations.
tough, but it's been so far, I mean, again, very early for me, but it's already been pretty rewarding and
Yeah.
frankly just so freeing because
Yeah.
I'm in charge. I'm in charge of everything
Exactly.
about this business,
Yeah.
which is has its downsides too, but it's also really a really
Yeah.
freeing feeling.
I
Well,
love how the first thing that you leaned into too was that sense of like evolution of self because we talk a
Yeah.
lot about that and it's
mhm.
something I feel personally very strongly about because I feel like in my time at League I've similar like really come through it my own journey even with myself on it. It's kind of like I have
Mhm.
kids, I'm not sure if you have kids, but it felt similar to like birthing another
Yeah.
new human in life and that process you go through of like
No, I
being
don't have kids, so I
yeah,
can't relate to that aspect of it, but I'll take your word for it.
right, and I love that that was what you first led with because I think that's a key piece and also just a key piece of having that self-awareness even and that ability to reflect and understand like where because that's what will create resilience for you in your business and the ability to not burn out and to like
Yeah.
really like figure out what you need and how you need to evolve with it and not have
Yeah.
it something that doesn't work for you. So kudos. I think that's cool.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much.
Awesome. Okay, so as a tradition here on System Override, the last episode, we always ask the audience for a big action, and last week's big action was really about thinking about AI and one great thing in which it enabled you to do differently this year over last year. And so, Kara, I'm going to toss it back to you because you
Mhm.
and I, when we were getting to know each other, you talked a little bit about how you're using it as advisors to you. And I
Yeah.
thought that was so cool. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm actually I have crafted so far it's a three quote unquote person advisory board using a Claude project. So this is an advisory board that is made up right now of kind of a CFO type persona, a strategy persona, and a growth persona. So those are the three that I've kind of determined at this moment in my business I can most utilize. And so it's an advisory board literally that I customize them to give me very unvarnished, don't sugarcoat it, don't flatter me
Mhm.
feedback when I come to those three personas with questions or challenges, things I'm not sure how to do or how to manage. Recently, they helped me out on some pricing questions that I was facing myself with. I was kind of having an internal battle about some pricing things, and they set me straight. And based on all the information that I had fed them about what I want to do with my business and who I really want to serve, the type of work I want to do. So that's been truly kind of a game-changing thing for me. And again, as a solopreneur, that's not could I go, look for a CFO that's done this and maybe can do it on a fractional basis? Yes. And I think that's a great thing for those that can. I don't have the resources this early in my business to be able to do that. And so having these personas really kind of help me get things set up in a proper way, and just having them to lean on, and knowing I can also expand that advisory group
Yeah.
at some point if I determine there's kind of another
Mhm.
expertise I need. Right now I'm solo, so I don't need necessarily like, a people expert or an HR expert, but
Right.
that may change someday if I decide to expand the business. So yeah, it's been really cool, and I'm excited about, continuing to lean on them even more.
Yeah. I as soon as we got off the phone that day, I went and said to Brie, I said, "You
Yeah.
wouldn't believe what she felt."
It was very
And the
Yeah,
reason, because this is often a barrier, right? To solo entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship in general. And it's again a great example of where AI helps take that barrier down. It doesn't
yeah,
necessarily replace anybody. It's because to your point, these weren't going to be full-time jobs. They were going to be probably advisory, maybe even volunteer type of roles where you
yeah,
leaned on somebody in your network to give you advice off the side of their desk. And that often happens, but you can have it at any time that you need it. And you can continue to have that conversation to make sure you really are getting the type of advice that you could have got from other professionals. So I just
yeah,
love that for entrepreneurs, and a really good example of how AI is just changing the way we work.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
absolutely.
that you set it up as like actual like personas and created something
Hmm.
around them. That's what I thought was so, because like I will ask Claude, in real time as I'm working through things and like be this
Yeah,
position and tell me this and this. But I'm like, how brilliant to actually create a whole identity around it. And so there's a continuation as if it was a real individual attached to your business that you can tweak and grow with the business rather than just like at time of prompt kind of like interaction. I thought that was
yeah.
really cool. And I'm 100% going to copy that.
I love it. And
Wait a second.
yeah, and
You
it's
have a
it's not
growth
original
persona.
to,
I know I do, but
yeah.
it's like, I need these now. I like these.
Yeah, and others are doing this too. I mean, this isn't an original
Yeah.
idea necessarily,
No,
but what
it's
I
okay.
created for my
I'll
business is completely, obviously bespoke for what I need. But I think the AI advisory board kind of idea is floating out there, and
Mhm.
there are kind of probably even really good prompts for people can customize. But yeah, so I won't take credit for inventing the AI advisory board, but I do think that's something that I've leveraged really fast in my
Yeah.
business that's been a game changer for me. So yeah, glad to hear, Bree, that you're gonna implement.
I am. I think that's a great idea.
Except for the growth persona.
I
I
mean, yeah,
just
I
want to make
have a
sure that
lot
we're
of
You've got one of those.
I've got
this
NFL,
is
I've got girls, I've got whatever. But sometimes it's just helpful to have a secondary, triage. You can expand. Although I sometimes can be like feedback can be the death of me. I just love getting more and more information. So maybe this is a bad thing for me. I'm gonna make I have 1,000 agents strong advisory group. I've
Yeah.
built
Well,
it. Hundreds of agents.
what's fascinating too is, like, not surprisingly, like a typical advisory board or even kind of a leadership team, the personas don't, in fact, they often disagree with one
Yeah.
another.
Mhm.
And so if I'm asking all three of them, they'll, give me each of their individual kind of takes on it. And they'll say, I disagree with, the
Yeah.
financial person. But then at the end of it, they'll give me a kind of consolidated,
Response.
recommendation.
Yeah.
So that helps too, because yeah,
Yeah.
if you're getting three plus different opinions, it's sort of like, well, who do I weigh against? And it's helpful to have them go, here's what we think you should do based on this.
Yeah.
But it's really cool because it is, like real life. They don't always agree.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love
maybe
that.
that's a brilliant thing too. I feel like from advisory, because like I certainly talk to a lot of humans in real life who I have in my advisor camp, but that is exactly like the mind mess as you come back being split in
Yeah.
25 different directions. So it's like
Mhm.
you're part of an advisory or a board. You guys shouldn't have a amalgamator of your things into one core recommendation. Because
Yeah.
as a founder, sometimes you can be like, oh God, which way are we going here?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so great. I love it. And so for the audience, I think it's just really important to just keep thinking about the ways that you can implement AI, because it's not just that aggregation of knowledge, I think is where we all started with it and look at it as more of a chat kind of feature. I always refer to it like Google on steroids. It's not that.
Yeah.
It really is very helpful when applied appropriately and allows us to work in a different way that is so
Yeah.
exciting. And
Yeah.
and just yeah, just allows us to elevate our own human qualities in a different way than we could before.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch over to the stories. And so the first story of the week is one of my favorite entrepreneurs. Sheryl Sandberg was doing a commencement speech this week where she put out to the audience, get rid of your 10-year career plan. They're dead. I don't think that was quite her word. But the points were that she's like a 10-year career plan. The one that you and your parents sat down and made from when you were like 6 years old all the way to when you're going to be a PhD or something. It's not going to work that way anymore. And so this was a great story for us because it's good to see that we are still going to be career planning, but it's going to look different. So, Bree, I'll turn it over to you. What were your initial thoughts about Cheryl and what she was talking about?
Yeah, I think like I'm definitely aligned in the sense that we don't necessarily know what's next. And so yeah, I heard a really great analogy on a talk the other day around just talking about, you even think about what we're doing right now, like as a podcast. Imagine going back like into the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, or you're in the 1930s and we're trying to explain like what we do for a living and what we're doing. They're just like, you do what? On the internet, like what? What even is that? I don't even know. And so I think 100% like it's the rise of exactly what Kara is doing. It's the individualist era. And so with that, we don't know what those jobs are going to be yet. We don't know how some of these changes are going to look. So I think I'm very aligned with the fact that trying to do that is probably not the most fruitful exercise. That said, I don't know if this was Cheryl's specific words in the speech or if it's more how the media strain flipped it a little
Right.
bit. But it felt a little bit like just throw everything out the window and see what happens a little bit, which I don't love that messaging.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, it doesn't mean I think it's like, it doesn't mean you don't need a plan. It's just your idea of a plan needs to change because it's less about trying to project out and more around trying to figure out this bubble circle around yourself that is going to operate within that unknown. And so what does that look like? How do you define your plan as far as like your value prop, your skill set, what you're leaning into? And I think you still have to be looking at the signals of the market in the sense of what's coming and where are things shaping and what direction are things taking. You don't have to do it, and maybe this is more my control side of myself, but I would feel that would spike fear and anxiety in me if I was just kind of be like, I'm just gonna float and I'm gonna the right things are gonna be like that is not gonna resonate for me. And so that made me feel stressed out. Like I was like, if I was someone listening to this speech, I would feel very stressed entering my career being told everything you know no longer exists, friends. So just figure it out. Like I think that's kind of stressful. I don't know. Kara, what did you think?
Yeah, totally agree on it being stressful, especially think about being, 22 headed into this kind of job market where the job you thought you might be doing may
Right.
not, when you started college, it may not exist anymore, right? That's stressful in and of itself. But then being told by someone of significant privilege, right,
Right.
to sort of just adapt also feels a little challenging to accept. Yeah, I struggle with the sort of float around. I think it's less it's not don't have a plan, right? It's just fix yourself less on the destination that you thought and more on a direction, right?
Yeah.
Or a set of kind of skills or capabilities that you're hoping to build rather than, a specific job title. I think that's probably a nicer way to look at it. If I'm 22, I'm going, okay, I had this job in mind. Maybe this job doesn't exist anymore, but at least directionally, I feel like here's where I want to head. And I feel like that feels a little bit more comfortable. It still, doesn't pay the rent necessarily, but it's a little more, I think, friendly to a young person coming out of school than just, just adapt.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought about though, and it's hard to put myself all the way back to my 22-year-old self, but like it's kind of scary when you're coming out in general, whether you have a
Yeah.
plan or anything. The fear of failure is real in your 20s. You don't have enough experience to know that failure actually is helpful and actually is how you build those key things that you need to survive in the workforce. I do think that lessening the stress on needing a 10-year plan and this perfect climbing the ladder one step at a time, and instead rethinking and really being able to lean into the things you love to do, which isn't always the message that everybody's family or professors have given us in the past. I think that is somewhat freeing, right? Which I think the three of us have all expressed here today, that going and doing our own thing is very freeing because it actually allows us to lean into the things we love to do every day. And I think that she kind of gave the audience permission that as you come out, don't think you have to have this very structured, corporate ladder plan.
Yeah.
You actually can choose your own way. And if you want to go be a YouTuber, go be a YouTuber with a university degree.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's pretty cool. There's some cool things that I think you could do with that if you looked at it from that light.
I would agree in that sense, in the sense of like, I remember when I went and finished, like, I finished my degree while working full time. So it took me like 8 years to do it on the side of like working. And so by the time I had finished, I was like not beginning my career, but I remember there was an older, because when I finished it, it was like a program you could do while working. So there were some older individuals in there. And there was one woman, I remember her name was Mary. And she was probably maybe 50s. And she was just kind of saying to everyone, she's like, man, all you young people are so stressed about like, what's my job? She's like, I've changed jobs like 10 times over the course of my career, and I've genuinely liked all of them except for maybe one. So I love the advice she was kind of giving to everyone in the sense of don't get so rigid around thinking like this is it. And so I kind of leaned into more around like it's more about being curious, but then again, like really understanding what do you like and what's feeling right and where are you feeling and moving into that, and not boxing yourselves out of opportunities. So to Shannon's point, I think that it does kind of show that for people, or kind of incentivize people to say don't be narrow, don't put yourself in a box thinking this is what has to be and what will be. That said, I'm still like, and again, it might just be the media spin, it might be the way, but I just don't love the way that language is coming across on this. And
Right.
Kara, I'd love to hear like your thoughts, because I feel like with all of our communication going more, organic and on social, it's all authentic. I just also feel though people don't give enough like gravitas and weight when you're a person of influence to like how you're saying things, what you're saying. And like these are young people, and also not realizing like people can really take these words at what they are, the 10,000-foot view.
Yeah.
They don't know necessarily there's something underneath of that. And this again goes back to the change management. There's the bold statement, but then there's the 2,500 things that make it real underneath. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing I'm just really struggling with all of the messaging I'm seeing, whether it's positive or negative, is it just feels too surface level. And as someone who's had to deal with a lot of, helping change through things or making things real, I just feel like it's doing a disservice to the audience in the sense you're not giving them tools, really. You're just playing their emotions. And it pisses me off. I'm not gonna lie. It just, I don't know, as a company who's here, like very much has deep care about truly helping people and truly creating a roadmap. I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I was actually writing some talking points for someone yesterday and was thinking about, it's really important that you balance what's being said with the how and the who, right? Because when you're someone like Sheryl Sandberg again, who comes from, not to, knock her. She's incredible and she's been a wonderful leader, but she also comes from a place of this is not something that's concerning her today, right? She's made it. She is where she is. And when you're talking to a young group, you have to put yourself in the mindset of how are they going to receive what I'm saying, or any group, right? This is true of anyone delivering a message, is not only what do I want to say, which is where a lot of leaders end the conversation. Here's what I want to say, but really, what does my audience want or need to hear and how?
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're giving them in a sort of, again, I didn't see the speech, so we're basing it like on what the media has reported. But, depending on how she delivered that information, did it delight, these students, these graduates, or was it sort of like, wait, what? I had a plan and now she's telling me I don't? So I think putting yourselves, no matter, again, if you're Sheryl Sandberg or if you're, a leader at a smaller organization, putting yourself in the position, and again, AI can help you with this. I've built tools for this actually in AI. Put yourself in the position of a a skeptical or nervous employee or an early, a college graduate, and put your talking points through there and let it help you understand how to deliver those things with a tone that matches the mood, right? That matches the time. Yeah, I think it's less so much about here's what I want to say and more about here's what I hope, these people
Help.
take away from
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah,
delivering.
Yeah. No,
that's
I
awesome. That's great. I think it's good. It's one of the reasons we do this podcast is that we get to see a variety of different views and try to present it from different angles because
Yeah.
words do mean different things to different people at different stages of their lives, right?
Yeah.
And we focus so much on what's communicated informally now as
Right.
opposed to formal communication. I haven't read a formal press release in a long time, but I definitely get all the offshoots of however everybody interprets the press release, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's move over to our second story, which follows in kind of our theme of human capital this week, which was out of Goldman Sachs. And the CEO there really came out strong in an industry that really has been said was going to be disrupted by AI, right? Originally out of the gate, the financial or particularly financial analysis was going to be decimated because AI could just come in and make all the predictive reports and pick all the investments and do everything that investment
Hmm.
advisors and bankers could do. And he's saying that's not what he's saying. He's like, I'm seeing that approximately 25% of our work can be consumed by AI, but it is really about creating agency for their humans to go and do the things that are really important in the investment world. Like, and maybe where we've lost our way, these are my words, not his now, in that financial services vertical, when people stopped like being able to have time to interact as humans and really understand what companies are wanting to achieve or what individuals want out of their investments, which really comes from the heart and the emotion of the money element. It's a highly emotional. I was in banking for a long time. It's a very emotional tool.
Hmm.
It unlocks everything that we do. And so I thought it was interesting that such a powerful gentleman in the corporate and banking space came out and was exact opposite of, some of our tech gurus that are saying like this is going to decimate everything. Who'd like to take this one first? Kara, would you like to tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think this is very interesting because you alluded to it, but I think this is also coming out in the same timeline as some of the tech folks that are saying, AI is going to eliminate your job, not your job,
Yeah,
but jobs, right? And jobs,
yeah.
by maybe 25% of jobs are not going to exist anymore. So in some ways, it's actually, I think, really refreshing, to see this kind of
Hmm.
message, which is not focused on replacement, but really augmenting. And the way we've already talked about it in this discussion is, it's not replacing me the way I'm using it, it's helping me do more. And I think that can be true across industries, certainly in banking.
Hmm.
So I think it was refreshing to hear now, how true we'll see, I think, in 1, 2, 3, 5 years, and if, Goldman still feels like, okay, we don't see AI replacing our people, it's going to help them. I don't know. I don't know enough about banking and what
Right.
goes into those skill sets to be able to make an informed judgment there. But
Yeah.
I would be curious to see how this shapes up over the coming months and years.
Yeah. Bree, what are your thoughts?
I think I find all of these articles so interesting, and I try not to laugh a little bit when any of them come out because I feel like they're all just so preliminary. You know what I mean? They're all
Hmm.
calling they're calling the end of the game at the end of the first
Very
quarter.
beginning.
Kind of like,
Yeah.
you don't know,
We're still
bro.
in the
Like,
pre-skate.
you're not even started the season. Like, you haven't even adopted. It's like we're not seeing it. It's like, have you even adopted it? How the organizations are still figuring it out. So it's like, yeah, I mean, for what you've done. And so, one, I think it is positive to what Kara said. I think it is very positive to see a thoughtful balance coming out to that narrative so that you can see both sides of the coin. I do think both sides are a little silly in even calling the end of the game so early because I think we're just not there yet.
Yeah, we're
Will
just
it be incredibly disruptive? I think, what is the definition of disruptive? I think it's like
Mhm.
change. Will it change how we work a lot? Yes. I think he had acknowledged he thinks it'll automate maybe a quarter of working hours. Bullshit.
Mhm.
It's going to automate a lot more than that, but new things are going to be coming out of like new ways of interacting, new types of jobs attached to that that maybe better service the client, better service the whatever. So I think for me it's like I think it will be very disruptive in the sense of change and that it's going to change a lot about people's roles. What I don't believe is that all people now are no longer needed or that there's not for any person displaced there might be a new version of that or a different kind of complementary role that might exist later. So I think again this kind of goes back to my comment around like how we're communicating things, how we're communicating the nuance. Like from his opinion, I don't necessarily think it's not wrong. It is what he's seeing, in his data,
Mhm.
his organization. I think it's interesting because and maybe the key point as an individual is like you will have your favorite things to follow on this topic and your favorite individuals to follow, but what is needed is multiple data points to triangulate because everyone is just one perspective in something that is very unknown and very big. And so, how do you surround yourself with multiple viewpoints so you can start creating a well rounded thought on this? Because that's what I find. Maybe it's like everyone's information is not technically wrong or untrue based on their little point, but this is such a big thing that you need more than one data point to make or two,
Yeah.
to make real understanding or assessment of where things are going.
Mhm.
What do you think, Shannon?
Yeah, I agree with the fact is it's so early in the game.
Yeah.
And what I would like to see some of these CEOs and very influential people start to do is talk about what could be possible. Because you know what? None of us, not one of us know what it's going to look like. Like even
Yeah.
if we go back 100 years and we look at as like the, cars were being built and all the new jobs that came from that, I think Henry Ford had a vision of what that was going to look like, but he didn't know either. He just knew how the assembly line was going to start to put itself together. He didn't know how that was going to trigger this massive transformation
Mm.
into so many industrial jobs and then knowledge jobs and now we've had like lots of internet and creative jobs like that 100 years worth of jobs compared nobody would have been able to predict that we'd be doing a podcast today
Yeah.
100 years ago,
Yeah.
right? But we have extremely intelligent people leading this world. And, I think there would be great to follow up this words with, if I was a predicting man, I would say, my team will be doing way more,
Yeah.
strategy work
Mhm.
alongside some of the other great business leaders in the world, or our advisors get to sit with people and really think about what their money's doing for them and what makes sense, or maybe advising government around where they're seeing investment and
Mhm.
opportunities and stuff. Like spending more time on the human side
Yeah.
feels like where banking should go back to. Because in my experience in banking, we left the human side and we went all numbers and spent a lot of time away from the customer. And I think this is a great opportunity to say maybe that's where they're going. I don't know if that is where they go, but
Mhm.
it's a reasonable assessment of if I don't have to do all these
Yeah.
things that kept me tied to my computer
Yeah.
or that AI can replace for me, I
Yeah.
could spend way more time doing great things with a whole group of really intelligent humans.
But do you know what I think is the tell? I think the tell for me is like exactly your point. You're like, oh, I want to hear how could you use it? If you don't have thoughts on how you're going to use it, you're not actually using it very much.
Ah,
That is my tell.
Mhm.
There's no way. Like, I'm going to pass this over to Kara because, as someone who's really dug into this, but for us, there's no way that I go. We have an entire channel on our Slack called Brain Space because we're constantly coming up with new ideas of how to work
mhm.
because of how much we're working in it. It constantly brings up new ideas about the business,
Mhm.
how we could use that. it flows abundantly. Like, you don't have to try. That's why we set up a channel so you could capture it at any time, because at any moment of working, you're just coming up with these thoughts and you're seeing what's possible. So I would say to me, the tell is people aren't really using it that much in these businesses, these big
Mhm.
companies. Change again takes time. There's no way in hell, from how quickly things have been coming out and evolving, that these businesses have even touched a fraction of what is capable for them. And again, calling the game early, aren't really utilizing it in a way that is meaningful enough yet to even understand or be able to communicate how they could use it in the future. So I'd love to hear some of Kara's thoughts on it.
Yeah, I actually 100% agree
Yeah.
with you, Bree. I think still we're seeing, a lot of the use cases in AI being that sort of vending machine or kind of Google amplified
Mm.
approach,
Yeah.
right? Which is help me answer these questions, help me maybe do a bit of research rather than more strategic, help me be more effective at the work or help build my business or help, build build the banking business for
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs. And I think you're so right to call it out because I think it's preliminary is the right word without saying, okay, here's how we really see AI augmenting our business, helping the business. You're just, yeah, I think it's just
Mhm.
words. It's a little bit of theater at this
Yeah.
point. Um, yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is I love that you talked about the sort of the brain space that you have in your Slack channel. I use Notion and I have kind of a brain dump category too that I do try to revisit occasionally. But yeah, I think there's the aspect of, I think a lot of these companies are and people in them are using AI to do research or summaries or things like that. Again, a little bit of the sort of level one, if you will, which is fine, but that's not going to drastically change the workforce or the workplace. It is when I think the IQ about AI comes up a little bit, and to your point, Bree, that takes a ton of time,
Yeah.
and the speed with which these technologies are coming out, and I mean, once a week, I feel like at least we're getting
Yeah.
something new
Yeah.
from Claude even.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, unless these businesses are investing in their employees actually,
Really
really
getting
learning those things and
Right.
and leaning in and getting to know them. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little bit of that sort of quote unquote vending machine kind of
it.
approach for a long period of
Mhm.
time.
Well, and I feel like too, and Shannon, this is probably good for you to speak to. It's like when you have a regulated business, like banking world, like you're hesitant. Like I remember in oil and gas when a lot of this stuff was starting to come out in the regulated side that I used to be in. It's like people are very hesitant to really unlock
Mhm.
a lot into it. And so you're only letting it touch the tiptoe of your things because you're so worried about the risk attached to it and the security
Yeah.
around it and this and this and that. So again, this is like a use case, but I think from our listeners' perspective, if we're from an individual perspective, like there's just some discernment of like who is talking about their experience with AI. What is their industry? What is their background? How would it apply to them? Because again, AI is going to have very different applications depending on what your business is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what as you're saying that, what came to mind is something that we thread through many of our podcasts is encouraging our listeners to go out and just try something different inside of one of the models. And I mean, move away from just doing research or getting it to write you a nice email or something like that, but to actually put a prompt in to generate a prototype, put a prompt in that, creates a personas and gives you somebody who can help you with something that you do day to day, whether it's work or life, those kind of things. So you can really see how
Hmm.
it does it for yourself. Because once you've used it, to your point, Bree, then you can talk about what it's going to do. But if you haven't actually used it to do those kind of things, it's still sort of way out there, right? We were talking about yesterday that, like, if anybody asked us, the ROI on AI for us in our organization is like 1,000 times. Like,
Yeah.
what we've been able to accomplish using AI and not
Yeah.
having to spend the money on the human. And again, no job was lost here because there wasn't a job to begin with.
Yeah.
But right, we wouldn't have gotten this far because you can't bootstrap and hire expensive resources and get there. It would have been much slower trajectory. And so that ROI spun for us very, very quickly. But we do know that it's very expensive to also use, a full compute every day inside of some of these models. They're costing way more than an actual engineer would cost. So there has to be balances if you're using it or not using it. And we do know that many companies are not using it to that extent. Like obviously the tech companies are, but not necessarily another space. So I think it is really good. The most important thing is just to take your own life into your own hands and go try it yourself, and then you'll see what it is what's possible. And then you can also use that in your next job interview because you'll be able to do something they can't do. Okay, let's go on to what is again another very interesting story. This week, Allbirds, the sustainable shoe company, announced that they were transitioning their brand to New Bird AI, and this comes on the heels of them selling, $39 million of the assets earlier this year. And so we're going to start with Kara on this one because this is a brand story. It's a whole bunch of things. So, Kara, let's kick it over to you to get us off on this one.
Yeah, well, I will just say personally to start off, I'm sad that they're not going to be in shoes anymore. Not for me necessarily, but my dad is notoriously hard to buy for, and he loves Allbirds. And so it's kind of been a go-to like every 1 or 2 years. That's okay. I know what I'm getting him for, Father's Day or birthday. So personally, a little sad there. But yeah, I mean, it's a brand story, it's a finance story, it's a strategy story. But yeah, I think from a brand perspective, I think a lot of times people think of brand as, okay, the name of the company, the logo, the sustainability aspect of it. Having worked on a lot of sort of brand development and refreshes, it's so much more than that. And I will, this is a hill I will die on, but brand is so much more than the logo or the colors or the fonts or, even what you're selling. It's really what people are saying about your brand when you're not in the room. That's the brand ultimately. And I think right now, New Bird AI, I don't know what everyone's saying about them in rooms, but I have to imagine it's a little bit of mass confusion for their employees for sure. I think the street loved it, right? Their stock went up 600%, but I used the word theater earlier. I feel like this is a masterclass in some theater because I don't feel like they've expressed a true strategy around AI. Pivoting from shoes to AI is a very hard left. I don't know how you do that without completely overhauling your entire organization, really. It just seems like a huge pivot. So from a brand perspective, I just think they'll have to start from the ground up in building, new mission, vision, values. What are they focusing on? What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Just plopping AI at the end of your name doesn't mean a lot, right?
Yeah.
Again, their stock grows, and if that was the goal, then sure they've achieved it. But long term, do we see that sustaining? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it'll come back to haunt them a little bit.
And so, Bree, I'm going to ask you a more specific question on top of that. So, why do you think they did that? Like, why do you think they chose to do something similar and transition versus like just go start a new company with a new brand?
Totally. I was saying the same thing, and it was just like it's such a bizarro story come across, and I remember hearing the news, and you're like, "What the hell?" So I did a little bit of looking in and seeing, and like they did, do the sale, and then they were using that corporate shell to like stand it up. So the only thing I was thinking is, not having more context, but in my mindset, there must have seemed like some sort of a play or a benefit that they could have used from a business perspective off that corporate shell, maybe. Or were they thinking it was brand and like being able to at least leverage, but that doesn't necessarily make sense for me because even if you started a new company, you could still leverage the brand, and say like, we've sold the entity and now like it's just this whole narrative that came attached to it. So it really did. Kara said, stock bro, like this felt very tech bro to me and being very narrow sighted and looking like I feel like someone was just looking at the model, looking at the business model, and they're like, bada boom, bada bing. I got the sexy stuff, best. We are so smart. We're going to do this, but not considering some of these other factors around this decision. As far as like perception and how this was going to go, it was more just like, this is so smart for us to do this behind the scenes. This is what's going to make sense. We're going to gamify this and we're going to do this. It's going to create this buzz. And I just feel like this is an example of gamification, like gone wrong in the sense of like being too cute and too smart for your own self in that way. Like that's just my opinion of why they were thinking of trying to do this when it really doesn't make sense from how it has turned out for them. Did they get the increase in price? Yes, but that's only one side. It very quickly dropped, and a lot of really well-known sources are saying like this is such a performative like Hail Mary bullshit of a failing company. And so like I don't think they're actually like, yes, you can get some of those like waves in the market, but they don't sustain. And so like just because you got a 600% pulse doesn't mean it's going to stick. And from what I was seeing, it wasn't sticking. Like, it was going to be very much of like, okay, so you're going to do this and you have a certain, amount of dollars, but you're going up against the Googles of the world, the so-and-so, like all of these people have a shit ton of money to do this. And how do you, as a failing brand with a limited capital, think that you're going to compete on that stage when you're entering an entirely new market that you know nothing about? So I didn't get a sense from the kind of like brief looking through that signals were strong in the sense of people being like, yeah, these are the guys to do it. And they really got it figured. They're better than Amazon and Google and all those other guys at this. I definitely trust Allbirds for that one. So yeah, that was my take of it. I think trying to be too clever, trying to be too optimized on your business strategy, but really going at it in a really narrow opinion and with a very strong lack of judgment, I would say, and maybe lack of advisory around that too. I don't know. That was my take.
They needed Kara's advisory council.
Right? Like they need to advise some advisors because even just for how this has gone down, even in the news, it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is this like, as a business, I wouldn't want this kind of narrative for my business, but it's also the era of Trump. So it almost feels like bad news. Any news is good news for you, whether it's good, bad, or
As long
ugly.
as you're making the news, yeah.
As long as you're making the news. So like, I don't know. Like, Kara has way more expertise on knowing how those show up in the business, like long term, I guess.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the begging the question is like, yeah, how this is landing. It makes me wonder if like, do they care how it's landing, or was it really
Yeah.
just a short term play to boost price? And
Yeah.
Bree, you mentioned it's not as high as it was, so I don't know how effective that was. But yeah, I don't know that necessarily. I'm sure they did have advisors in the room. I'm sure there were plenty. But yeah, I think probably, how this is going to land, public perception was not high on the list of priorities for them. It was
Yeah.
I mean, based on what we're seeing, I really do think this was probably a play just for the market, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, long term, I really don't know what that looks like for them, but it's bizarre for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just feels like League coming forward and being like, you know what, guys, we are going into medical devices. That is where we're shifting. We definitely will figure it out. We're gonna figure it out, you guys. Don't worry about it. And so, yeah, it seemed very short term. Like, I think it would have been better to literally just sell the brand off quietly, start a whole new company, use the leverage of like, we have built an incredible business.
Yeah.
This way.
Personal value.
This is under new leadership. We have a whole team because like keeping a shoe brand attached to this in a narrative just like immediately erodes trust in my mind. I'm like, who do you think you are that you know how to build data centers? You made like well felt shoes, didn't you? Like how does that even translate? Also, I think from a brand perspective too, like you would not want those two things to be attached because Allbirds was all about sustainability and a very eco-friendly messaging. And then to swap that to data centers, which are like the highest thing in the news right now as far as being very environmentally, not good. I just don't understand. Like, that's why I feel like this was, I don't know, I'm putting my like tech hat on and like the behind the scenes. It was like, this is too many late night spreadsheets and whiteboarding moments without a lot of, this was getting into a little bit of a bubble where you weren't really thinking clearly, like through the exhaustion haze of what this needed to be and look like, or just like very poorly executed. I don't know.
Yeah. I think we can establish that it was all of those things,
Yes.
which is why it ends up being like our story that we're like, what the heck? and no answers for, because it just doesn't necessarily make sense. And we'll just leave it to them to assume that they knew what they were doing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Publicly, it just didn't come off well.
But you know what? Maybe
Yeah.
from a listener perspective, maybe this is helpful to those who are just watching the news and looking at this to be like, that's just why a level of discernment is needed for all.
Yeah.
It's Luda out here, you guys. There's shoe companies and AI and the news and this and that. Like, who knows? So I think that's maybe like from a listener perspective, if I'm trying to discern, like this is a really good when things were starting to feel really scary or like a lot of doom and gloom was coming down, like you kind of look at these news stories coming up and being like, okay, maybe I do need more proof points here because this seems like banana town. And like I need to like kind of create some bigger things around this because what is actually happening in all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So hopefully everybody listening out there really saw today that we really did try to focus on a theme of human capital and the importance of humans in an AI world. That no matter what it is, others will make decisions, they'll make comments, they'll do things that seem very irrational, and that might have an impact on you immediately, but you have to really always hold on to the things that you can control. And there are some great things that you can control, and AI is going to help you do that. And so that leads me into our big action for the week. And this week we want, similar to my prompt earlier, we want our listeners to think about something that they do better than anybody else and make sure that they have that strong in their value proposition. And then maybe even look at how AI helps them elevate that, because we wholeheartedly believe that individual skills and things that elevate you and make you happy are really part of the AI era and how our future is going to look. And so that's our ask. Any advice or thoughts as people venture in to do that task this week from either of you?
That's deep. What are you the best at? I first of all, I love the prompt because I think we tend to think about what could I be better at, what am I not good at. Just as human beings, we tend to look at what am I not good at. So I love the prompt that pivots it. But yeah, I think honestly, putting in this is when I would feed a lot of bio information about myself, of like achievements that I've had in my career, things like that. I would feed those honestly into my friend Claude and say, help me think through, interview me, help me think through how I might answer this. But I would probably come with a few, I think I'm good at this types of ideas to challenge. But yeah, that's a really good prompt. I love that.
That's a great advice too, right? A good way to, because sometimes we have our own biases. And we're like, we made one mistake here, and so we're not the best at that.
Yeah.
But you're like, we really are the best at that. That's great. Bree, any other advice?
Yeah, I think for me, like even in just looking at this question, it's like pushing me in a way where I know what I do better than most and I know where my value is, but it's really around assessing like your own kind of perception or beliefs around those things. Like I do my best connecting with people. Like that is where I know my secret sauce is. Now, what does that mean in the role that I need to play in League and in this company? One, love connecting with people on all ways, but in the new world of work, what does that also look like? That means sticking on my face on LinkedIn. That means getting on all of our social platforms and talking all the time. And I don't like it. I don't like having, like, I love this podcast. I love doing these kind of things. I don't love feeling like, I don't know. I don't love feeling like I'm on a stage that's not organically, you know what I mean? Like I'm fine to be doing talks or things like that, but I don't know. There's just something about it that I've been resisting, and I know inside I need to stop resisting it, and I need to go freaking do it. And so I think that's one thing that I would say from a listener perspective. You can join me in this journey is like sit down and assess these things, but also assess where are you on your journey towards that, because sometimes we resist ourselves in those spaces that are our most power for whatever reasons, whether it's, limiting beliefs you're telling yourself, whether it was the circumstances that you came up in or certain experiences. Like, where are you not letting yourself shine? Where are you not unlocking your full power and opportunity because of this resistance inside yourself to step into that next thing? So now that I've said this loud and publicly, it forces me now. Because even on LinkedIn earlier today, I was like, oh, I hate LinkedIn so much. And like closed it. I'm like, I can't stand it. But I got to be there. I just got to do it,
Yeah.
guys.
I think it's good. I think that one thing that makes people hesitate quite often is because the thing that they're the best at isn't broken.
No.
So often we will lean away from the things that really work and don't feel like we have to fix them or do something different. And I think
Mhm.
that one of the things that is most exciting for me as we, travel into this AI era is that if the things that I am really, really good at are the things I get to do more of, I want to be even better at those things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can get rid of all the stuff I really don't love doing, but
Mhm.
is a necessity. And I think that really excites me, and why when we were kind of thinking about what we want our audience to start thinking about is really identifying those things and then figuring out how to lean into them, how to talk about them, how to like execute them in whatever business that they're doing or in their personal life. It's a pretty exciting time to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Awesome. So, Kara, it has been a pleasure having you join us today. Do you have do you have any final words that you want to leave with the audience?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I would say just I think to echo Bree what you just shared is letting yourself think about in this kind of new world that we're living in that's changing day by day in terms of what's possible, letting yourself think about what could be unlocked if you really, put your head and your heart into what do I really want to do? Where could I really go? And not lock yourself into that maybe 10-year, 20-year plan that you came up
Mm-hmm.
with years and years ago, but think about what's possible now that wasn't even 6 months or a year ago. I think that's been a game-changing
Awesome.
kind of thing for me is just to think about so much more is possible for me than it was when I, came out into my career and certainly even, you know, last month.
Yeah.
There's more possible for me now.
Yeah.
So just evaluating like what could be unlocked in you if you really thought about what's possible and not necessarily all the constraints first. I think we tend to look at what's holding us
Yeah.
back rather than let's pretend those things aren't there and what
Yeah.
what could we be doing that we really love.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Bree, some closing words?
I think just thank you again, Kira. I loved having you. It's been very fun.
Thank
I
you.
think we've realized like we like having guests, and it also makes us be
Yay.
on our best behavior as far as being like, and I'm like, we're on early, on time, like super prep.
Bree didn't swear.
I didn't, I didn't take the F bomb off because I'm like, I don't want to make Kara think like poorly of me. But thank you so much for joining us. We really loved
Thank you.
you had and brought to the conversation. And we love supporting other female entrepreneurs on their journey. If you're looking for something like Kara, check her out at KLYR Strategies, but it's KLYR Strategies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kara, for joining us. And to all the listeners, thanks for staying with us. 58 minutes today. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Three of us have lots to say. But and particularly for Kara joining us today, it would be great if you shared this podcast with many of your friends to just get the word out, because she's
Yeah.
building a business there.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks so
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.